Forms can have a variety of additional objects added to them in order to help customize their appearance and functionality. Collectively, these additional objects are called form controls, and you can find them in the Form Design view. Let's continue refining our training department's employee form. I'll go down and find it in the navigation pane, and I'll right-click on it and open it straight to Design View. On the Design tab up here, we have the Controls group with all of the things that we can add into our form. This is actually a scrolling list. There's all of these controls here, but we can also scroll down and see a whole nother row of controls here. If you want to see everything at once, you can use this drop-down list to view them all on the screen at one time. Now we're going to add a few of these controls onto our form. First, I'm going to use this line control here. I'll click on it, and I'll drag out a line to mark off some space at the top. I'll simply click and drag the line out. When the line is perfectly horizontal, it actually disappears completely, but when you let go, it will show up. So there's my first object, this line. Let's add a rectangle around our benefits to show that they all group together. I'll use this drop-down arrow and choose the rectangle here. I'll click on it, and I'll drag a box around all of our benefits. I can also add a label to the top of our benefits. This one here, with the capital A and the lowercase a, this is a label object. It's not connected to data. I'll click here, and I'll add a label called Benefits. Once I get that put in, this little warning flag pops up saying that it's not actually connected to anything. That's okay though. We can go ahead and use this drop-down list and say Ignore Error. Now that we've got this group labeled as benefits, I don't necessarily need it to say Benefit Dental, Benefit Medical, Benefit Retirement. I can simplify these by double-clicking on each one and deleting the word benefit. Now when I double-clicked on this, it actually toggled on the property sheet. So let's go ahead and close that back out again. I can add a logo to the top left corner. I can do that by using this Insert Image button here. I'll say Insert Image and then Browse. Out of my exercise folder, which is on my desktop, Exercise Files, in the Chapter 8 folder, we'll find the No Obstacles logo. I'll click that and say OK. Now my cursor changes to a little picture icon, and I can drag out a box where I want my image to be. Finally, I'm going to add one more label across the top, which will act as a title. I'll click on the label and click again to add that. I'm going to add a label that says Training Department Employees. I'll go ahead and press Enter, and again, I'll dismiss this flag by saying Ignore Error. Finally, I'm going to change the formatting of this. I'll enlarge the box quite a bit, and I'll go to the Format tab and change the font size to something like 20, and I'll try a bold font. There. Let's go ahead and add one more control. Back in the Design group, if I use this button here, there's an option called Option Group. It has an XYZ at the top. The Option Group is actually data-driven, and what I want to do is use it to replace the job rating. I'll click here once, and I'll click down below the job rating field. The Option Group will create a list of features that we can choose from and then translate that into a numerical field that'll save back into the job rating. So instead of just displaying the number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 for our job ratings, we can use a radio button to select from. My label buttons, instead of our numbers, are going to be something a little bit more descriptive. For instance, I'm going to type here, Needs Improvement. I'll go down to the next field, Below Average. The next one will be Average. The next one will say Good. And finally, Outstanding. Go ahead and press Next. Access wants to know if we want one of these options to be a default choice. We can have it auto-populate, or we can choose, no, I don't want a default. I'll choose that option and say Next. The next screen matches the labels that we've previously selected with the values that'll get stored in the database. These numbers are in the correct order, so I'll go ahead and say Next. Finally, I can choose what I want to do with this data. I can either save the value for later use, or I can store the value that we select into a field in our database. I'll choose to store that as our job rating. Go ahead and say Next. And the last screen asks us how we want it to look. We can either have an option button, a checkbox, toggle buttons, and we can choose how we want the border around the edge to look. I'm going to leave it on Etched and Option button. Go ahead and say Next one more time, and we get to name our option group. I'm going to call this Job Rating. Go ahead and say Finish. Now we added an additional data-driven control to our form as well. Let's switch into Form View to see how these work. Now you can see that we've got our logo here at the top. I've got this bar separating the title from the rest of the form. I've got a box around our benefits, and I have this job rating field here that duplicates the information that we're seeing coming out of the data table. If I cycle through my records, you can see that the job rating matches the numerical value that's showing up for each employee. Now I can actually get rid of this field because we have that information in a more graphical way. I'll switch back into Design View one last time. I'll click on Job Rating here and press Delete. Then I'll move this up into the position that it took. Now that our form is starting to take shape, I'm going to go ahead and save it up here in the Quick Access toolbar. Adding additional controls to your form, including boxes and lines to mark off discrete or related areas of the form, or images to add branding identity, can really take your Access database from blah to snazzy. But beyond simple graphical appeal, additional controls such as the option group can really aid in data entry tasks as well. You should explore some of the additional control types to see how you can incorporate them into your own forms.